Hello, this is Isabel. Thanks for joining in tonight. If you're online, happy to see you tonight. So I want to make an announcement considering the Q&A. So every month it's been at 7 p.m. I find it's a little bit late, so I want to go back to the original version I had, which was during lunchtime. It's a little bit easier also for me from a planning perspective to do these during lunchtime. So the next Q&As will be 12 noon to 1 p.m. Now, if you find that this is really complicated for you to attend during lunch, put a comment below, say that, explain what your preferred times are, if you have preferred times, and I'll take that into account also. I think the idea is to make it easier for everybody and, make this time valuable for you and for me. So today the topic is creating work opportunities in Switzerland. This is something that I've been doing for many years now, this basically animation with creating work opportunities in Switzerland. It's really about how to be creative, to find solutions, and this is really what my work is about. I know when people come and talk to me, they say I'm looking for a job in Switzerland, and the idea tends to be, looking for employment, for a job with a company. I think in 2018 we have to become a little bit more creative because not all organizations hire, and you do have to find a solution to your unemployment situation. So I rather than to tell people I'm going to help you find an actual job, in my website you can read, it says I'm going to work with you to find a solution, which is realistic and it's honest in terms of deliverable. I find that it's more also accurate and up to date in terms of what people can expect. So in my view, in 2018, it's not about finding a job, it's about finding a solution, a career solution. And there's many, as you will discover today with my my seminar, my online seminar. So in terms of starting from the beginning, I usually have several parts in my seminar, but I also welcome people to ask questions. The idea is to make it interactive. So if you have a question at any time, just put it online and I will read it here on my telephone and I will answer live to your question. So again, the topic is usually very precise, but if you have a question that goes a little bit beyond the topic, it's okay. Again, the idea is to make this time valuable for both of us. So without any further ado, the first thing about looking for opportunities is to worry about image. And I said this in my Monday motivation, that was actually this Monday. I talked about image, I talked about style and how you present yourself. When you are looking for a career opportunity, you have to make sure that people remember you. This is going to be important because if you're not remembered, if people meet you and they don't get any type of, vibration or any type of interaction with you, they probably won't remember you. So you want to make sure that you're remembered. So be careful that you dress, a certain way when you go to events, when you go outside to the community, you go to cocktails, you go to seminars, conferences. This is definitely a place where you want people to connect with you and remember you. So always start with, in terms of creating your opportunities, make sure that you're conscious of your image. And some figures I wanted to give you tonight in terms of communication, non-verbal communication and verbal communication. What you say in terms of voice is only 38% of communication. So what you're telling people when you meet them. 7%. 38% is the tone of the voice. So if you speak loud, if you speak very, very, dim and stuff, maybe you met people and, they introduce themselves, they're quite positive and they speak loudly, and some other people will be very quiet and say, hi, I'm so-and-so. You can't even understand what they're saying. So that's the loudness of the voice. That's 38%, and body language is 55%. So the reason why I want to insist on this figure is that when you go to networking events or when you go to interviews, probably what people will remember is how you positioned yourself. So were you like this, or were you like this, or were you open? This sounds very, very outside of the topic, but it's actually quite important. If you want to have people drawn to you in terms of opportunities, you want to be open. So you need to remember this, your body language. That's why I tell people when I do the interview training to film themselves. So make sure that when you prepare your pitch or your speech for an interview, use your phone. Now we have easy access to cameras on our phone, and see how you come across. You can replay it and see how you talk, how you present yourself, the tone of your voice. You know, a lot of people have issues with presentation skills. This is something now that you have a lot of workshops on, and you can really get better at it. So I would recommend to really get that down. I mean, not only you're meeting people in terms of networking when you go to these workshops, but you're also improving your presentation, which is what people will remember about you. So presentation skills is very important. So image is number one. Number two, in terms of opportunities, is to consider yourself the product. So when you think about buying a product, you're probably going to look at this package, which is the presentation. And you're also going to say, okay, what is the best way to market this product? You know, do I want to put it on the top shelf? You know, I had the chance to work with merchandising teams in my career in HR. So merchandising is very important, you know, whether you put a product on the top shelf, on the low shelf, in certain corners. So this is going to increase the visibility of the product, enhance the sales. So it's the same for you. You know, if you're hidden in your apartment and you're looking for an opportunity, no one sees you, you are unknown, you're not going to get a lot of traction. Whereas if you schedule in your agenda to be outside every day, meeting people, getting cards, you're visible online, which is something I work on quite a bit with individuals. You know, at least you're visible, and at least, you know, it's easier then for people to get in touch with you. I mean, sometimes I'm surprised, but people are not very visible online. And this is something new also with social media. I've been working now for 8 years in terms of outplacement and coaching individuals. And I remember the time when not even everybody was online. A lot of job seekers were still doing the interviews and the resume sending and all that without social media. Now it's almost a given. I mean, not one single young professional, for example, would be out there looking for a job without taking into account social media. So it's really becoming a tool for the job seeker to be visible and to be on social media. So if you're not very comfortable yet, you're at a stage where you're hesitating, your LinkedIn profile is a little bit dusty because you haven't really taken care of it and you haven't really pursued making it better because you don't know how, this is definitely a project for you in 2018, is to really upgrade your LinkedIn profile in terms of building something that people can see. Definitely putting yourself out there as a job seeker, so people need to see that you're actually available. So there's a lot of different things you can activate to become this product. But to become a good product, you need to know why a company should pick you. So meaning you need to know what is your talents, you know, what are you good at? Why should I hire you? So it means that you have done a little bit of self-reflection. Skills assessment for some people is necessary. Not everybody. Some people know exactly what they're looking for and they just need to find the right opportunity. But I have to say, for most individuals, when I meet them, they're not quite clear on their direction. And the reason being, they don't really know, especially if you're an expat, how you plug your skills to the Swiss market. So there's a big gap between what you know, what you've been doing as a professional, and finding yourself on the Swiss market, which is really news for a lot of people. The difference in culture, the type of companies that are hiring, how the hiring gets done, which is very much networking in Switzerland. So all these different factors make it that it's almost a must when you're an expat to go through that stage of skills assessment, when you're really reviewing your strength, what you're good at, and to really basically renovate, you know, just like you would renovate a house, to renovate your resume, that you need to find out, you know, where are you going to get opportunities in Switzerland? What are the jobs that you could target? So unless you do this step and you understand really your strength and your skills, it's going to be hard to market yourself as a product because you won't know what to tell people. You may not be relevant. So I like to use the example, I used it yesterday actually. If you're an opera singer, but there's no opera house, you know, where you are, that's not going to be very helpful. So it's the same right now, whatever skills you have, maybe there's nothing where you are at the moment in terms of opportunities. So you need to, if you want to stay in Switzerland and you want to work in Switzerland, you may have to go through this stage where you say, okay, let me go back, you know, and see what I could do with my skills, how I could, you know, maybe do something different. So that's going to help you becoming that product. The next thing is that you need to be coherent. And this is also something a lot of people have a hard time with, and that's really slowing down their job search, is there's no coherence between all the things I just talked about, meaning the image that they portray when they meet people, their speech, their posture, you know, themselves as a product, their strength, basically everything is disconnected, and this is really confusing. So one example of that, and it happens to me when I go to networking events, let's say you meet somebody and they ask you, so what do you do? And you start saying, well, I do a little bit of consulting, but I'm also a nanny, but I'm also doing translation, and you're a little bit confusing, and people don't really know then in the end how to portray you or what kind of a person, you know, you are, and that's going to be harder for them to help you in your job search. So in other words, if you meet someone at a networking event and they ask you, what do you do? And you say, I do finance, I'm a treasurer, that's what I've been doing in the last 10 years, and that's my main skill set, then people can really remember you as, you know, someone who does treasury, and when they get your card and maybe if they hear of something, boom, they remember, because it's short, it's clear, no confusion. And again, you know, if you compare that to my previous presentation, where I do a little bit of a nanny and I'm doing translation, then people don't know anymore. They're very confused, and if they get calls or queries from people asking for resources or individuals, they won't necessarily think about you to position you. So I find that people who are generalists or who are a little bit of, you know, a jack of all trades, I would say, are harder to position, because they dilute their strength basically by being too many things. So then the main argument I get is that, well, you know, isn't that a good thing to know a little bit about everything, so that you're more of a well-rounded person and companies can see you as someone with potential, who can grow within the company, who can be a high potential. But this is you thinking about your growth. But remember, an organization, what they're out there to do is to make money and to grow their business. So in terms of, you know, how they position you is also what you see yourself as, and making it easy for them to manage you as an employee. So so you have to think about it in that terms. I mean, you could be a great talented person, you can do a lot of things, but in terms of organizational perspective, you want to be known as a specialist in one area. This is going to be easy for companies to remember, and recruiters and managers. This is going to be easier for you to manage your career in Switzerland. It doesn't mean you can't do other things, and maybe the opportunities will come at some point. But in terms of marketing yourself, which is really what's important to you today, is how do I market myself to get that contract and sign it and get a career? It's easier to position yourself as a specialist. So you have to remember that when you think about, you know, you don't need to necessarily merge, you know, potential and market and what you can get. It doesn't mean you're one type of person and all you can do is finance. Maybe you're great at marketing as well, but for this purpose of finding a job, you need to pick. So it's hard. A lot of people are multi-passionate people. It's hard. Almost when I do the resume, I realize it's hard also for people to focus on one thing, because, you know, it's hard. We have different passions, we have different interests. We want to do and rotate and do different things. But this is something that can come more as a consequence. But to enter the market and to get the more market potential, which is really what most people should be concerned with, it's definitely easier to position yourself as a specialist and as someone who's very good at one thing. People will always pay and you know, chase or headhunt and look for people who are very good at what they do. So that's, in the end, that's what people pay you to do. I mean, if you're too much of a generalist, then you're someone who can do a bit of everything. You're not really differentiating yourself. A lot of people can do a lot of things. So yeah, I'm not so interested in having someone who can do a little bit of finance and marketing and so forth. Maybe if I'm recruiting a CEO or general manager, then yes, you need to be more of a generalist. But if you look at most organizations, the main generalist is the CEO, and then everyone else has their niche. So if you want to get this this one shot to get inside a company, it's easier to do it as a specialist. So really, I would recommend that you build up your knowledge in one type of function so that you can enter the market and then grow from within. So I think that's what I wanted to say for this first part. Is there any questions about, you know, how you position yourself, or, you know, how to get traction in Switzerland before I move on to the next thing? I don't see any questions yet. So moving right along. The next thing is to make sure that you are very, very coherent in your resume and cover letter as well. So again, it goes back, if you're looking for a job in finance, then your resume and your cover letter should be linked to your search, you know. So again, it's being very aligned. And make sure also that of what you're looking for in a position, because if you're targeting companies, you're going to have a lot of different positions. So again, you also need to know what you're looking for. So the company usually knows what they want, but they expect that you know also what you want. So rather than to spend some time going to trying to see large and target your resume a little bit everywhere and anywhere, make sure that you know clearly where your strengths are. And it takes also a little bit of reflection on what you've done. So if you work for multinationals, for example, your best market is probably multinationals. Even if you only have a couple that you can apply to, you're narrowing down the market, but you know that's where you have the best chances. So it's really knowing yourself really and what your experience is. So remember, companies will do two things. They'll look at people who have very similar experiences than what they're looking for. So very, very easy. You know, I want someone who's a finance or marketing specialist for pharma. And that's exactly what I'm looking for. So if you've done marketing for, I don't know, consumer products, you're not interesting for them because they want pharma. So I know it's a little bit hard for people to accept that it's so narrow, but unfortunately I had this discussion with somebody yesterday who couldn't really understand why, and I tried to explain to her that that's the way it works. You know, companies are really focused on what they want. So if they want a marketing specialist in pharma, if you don't have the pharma experience, they're probably not going to be interested in you, and that's just the way it goes. So you just have to focus on, you know, if you're a marketing specialist in consumer goods, then you have a better chance targeting consumer goods. So go where you have the best potential, and you're saving yourself a lot of time rather than to try to go too large, applying for companies that won't be interested in you. So understand your market is important, and also being coherent in your priorities. So if you're looking for a job in a multinational where you know it's going to be very long hours and the job is going to require a lot, which is usually the case, especially in multinationals, I know how that goes. And at the same time, let's say you want to work part-time because of family issues, you know the two goals are conflicting. So you already start with a problem in a way. So I know that some companies may at some point be a little bit more flexible, may agree to part-time schedules. But in my experience, it's mostly for admin positions, what I see on the Swiss market. And it could be something you negotiate once you're inside the company, but it's not going to happen immediately. This is something that you would earn in a way that maybe if you're a senior leader, I've seen leaders that had flex schedules because, you know, they've been there for 10 years. And at some point we say, okay, you know, you're a manager, you've been around for 10 years, you've delivered a lot of work for us. We're okay if you take the Wednesday afternoon off, you know, after a while. But it's something that you would almost need to put your time in to get. It's not something you're going to be granted from the get-go. So if from the get-go you know you want a flex schedule, and this is very important to you to have 60-80% job, don't target senior positions. This is going to be, I think, a little bit of a difficulty to apply and not get any answers and waste time. So if your priority is to have flex schedule, you know, then it's also a you know, a self-assessment that you have to do. You know, this is my priority right now, so I'm going to target more junior jobs. Again, I'm explaining how it is in Switzerland. I'm not talking for the US or maybe countries where flex schedules are a little bit more part of the local culture. I'm talking about Switzerland and giving you tips to get the fastest way to get a job, you know. So everything I'm talking about tonight is to increase your chances of securing a contract in Switzerland. So if your job, if your main goal is to target you know, having a flex schedule, working 80, 60%, go for admin positions, because then you have more chances of finding them already and, you know, maybe requesting a part-time schedule after a while there. So that's it for how to look for a position. Still no question on the topic that I see. Okay. The next thing is think network. So this is something that comes back quite a bit in my presentations. I know people probably say, yeah, it's hard, you know, networking. I have a busy life, and sometimes it's also quite some money. I mean, you have to pay to go to these events, especially conferences. So it could become a budget, you know, if you spend, you know, 80 francs here, 100 francs there. But I would say it's probably the best tool that I could give you right now to secure a job in Switzerland. I mean, out of all the techniques that you can use in terms of getting yourself on the market and finding a position, probably the best one would be to network. Because networking is going to increase your chances of meeting the decision makers. So in other words, if you're looking for a job in supply chain or in marketing, rather than to go through the hoops of applying online and not getting any type of calls, if you go to conferences in marketing or supply chain, you go straight to the decision makers. So you can get in touch directly with the people that will decide on the positions and what's going on in the team. So really the best way to go straight to the source is to go to events. I have done a video in my Monday Motivation where I put some links below, and the video I will link up, and you will have access to all the information where I give some good places to network so that you can get some business cards, meet individuals. This is something that you need to include as part of your job as a job seeker. So being basically someone that's looking for a job is a full-time job. So it's what kind of events do I need to go to? What type of things I need to do to get a job as quickly as possible. This leads me to making this comment about unemployment, because unfortunately in this day and age, unemployment works against you if it's too long. So what I'm saying is networking to get into a job as quickly as possible, because if you wait too long, you will enter a different category of unemployed people. So I don't know if some of you have heard about this or you're aware of it. And this is my job also as a professional in outplacement and career counselor to give you this information. So basically, there's two types of unemployed people. So you have people who have just lost their job. Let's say they were laid off and they've been, you know, basically, laid off from their position, or the contract ends. And I would say if you're in the category of being out of work for 6 months or so because you were laid off or because you ended a contract, employers would consider you, because everyone, you know, can end a contract or be laid off. Same thing if you're working, you know, usually that's what employers favor. They prefer to hire people that are working. So you're still okay. And this is when I want you to come to me. When you're in this category, you're working, you have a job in Switzerland, but you want to get to a new job. You want to get something better, more appropriate for your skill set, more in line with what you want to do. So if you're in this category, I would say, great, you know, contact me at that point, because I can probably activate my network. This is part of my package, you know, get you in touch with the right people that you don't know, accelerate that part, so that you can get a better job. This is ideal. Now you have a secondary category of people, and I want to make that clear in this video. These are people that have been out of work for a year, even 2 years. So these are people that either thought they had all the time in the world, and maybe they went on holidays for a long time, or traveled, or basically they took a long time to get back because they wanted to take a long break, or because you're in a category of you took care of your children if you're a lady, or you're in a 45 plus category. So this becomes very sensitive, because these are people that are really, really in dire straits. You know, you've been out of work for a long time. And when people come to me at that stage, it's harder for me to help. And the reason why is because I can't really change the context. And the context is such that employers do not want, I'm just saying most of the time, people that are out of work for over a year. So you enter this category of long-term unemployment, and people are not necessarily open. Now, I don't want to get into the discussion of why and how, and this becomes a political issue. In my view, it's something that governments need to take care of. There needs to be more programs for people that have been away from the workplace for a long time. But this is not necessarily the easiest time where you can work with somebody to get a job, because it's going to be hard to motivate employers to trust that they can give you a job. Again, there's some programs out there for people who have been out of work for a long time, and I'm happy to try to help you get connected with those kinds of programs. Try to see your situation first, and maybe I can still help you. I have to check, it's a case-by-case basis. But again, the ideal for me is if I can work with you when you've been unemployed for less than a year, because then I know that in terms of success, I have better chances of getting you the type of position that you want, rather than if you've been out of work for over a year. So just making that as a side type of story, because not everyone is aware of that. I realize by talking with individuals, I think that we always think we have all the time in the world. It's like everything else, we think that time is ahead of us, and unfortunately it's not the case. If you want to stay in that fast track, out there with the employees that are chased and wanted in the workplace, you always need to have a job. So, well, I think there's other alternatives. If you want to have maybe at some point a little bit of a break, or work less, maybe you can negotiate again a part-time schedule or take more holidays or something like that. But I think it's always good to be always employed as much as you can. Again, things happen, you do lose a job, you do relocate and follow partners, so things happen. But I would say my general advice to the public would be, as much as you can, try to keep a job, even if it's a consultancy, even if it's volunteering, but always try to keep some kind of activity, because the moment when you enter this long-term unemployment, it's going to be very hard to get back into the workforce. So that's a side note. So again, no question before I keep moving on the next part of the topic. Next part of the topic is about opening up your horizons. So what do I mean by opening up your horizons? Sometimes when I work with individuals in Geneva, they tend to be very Geneva focused, which is fine. I understand sometimes you have family here and reasons to be here, but I always try to contrast the two between family reasons and career. When you're someone who favors, let's say you want to favor career in your life, and that's a choice that you make, then I think there's decisions to be made. So in other words, I find that it's going to be very difficult to have the career and at the same time, and I'm talking about have a thriving career or growing career, and have the family at the same time. It's going to be very, very difficult. Some people manage to do it, but in my experience, I think one of the partners will have to make a little bit of a sacrifice, meaning that they will have to take a lower job or maybe something they didn't really exactly want. But if you want to keep your career thriving, so if you don't have a family reason right now to be in one place and you want to have a thriving career, probably the decision to open up is wiser. So sometimes you're not in the ideal market for yourself. And this is also why people wait and have gaps, because they keep thinking that maybe after 6 months or a year, this one golden opportunity will come. Again, it can happen. It could be that maybe the season is a little bit slow for your type of opportunity you're looking for. But in my experience, it's also because if you want to secure a position, you also need to broaden up. And broadening up could be in every way. Maybe you need to review your skills, again, skills assessment, and maybe do something that's a little bit more aligned with what the market wants. Or it could be increasing the horizons in terms of geography, which is what most people have a hard time doing, because it means moving from where they are, which means changing lifestyle, etc. But again, I found that people were able to secure great careers, have more opportunities, better pay, etc., etc. It's because they move. Most senior leaders or CEOs or, again, executives, if you look at their typical career, they're people who are moving a lot. When I work for international organizations, those people were always positioned in different bases. They were always willing to go across the world. And that's how they always secured to have great jobs, great careers. They were not really worried about the location. So this is just something also you need to be aware of. It's not something that happens by chance, that these individuals are luckier or they have better network. In my experience, again, it's just that they were mobile from the get-go, and they understood that if they want to be career people, they need to also be mobile and be willing to go wherever the jobs are. And especially in international organizations where, if you work in a specific area, working as a specialist, the next career step for you is probably going to be in a different location, because at some point you need to be exposed to the projects that you're working on, and it's not always in Geneva. Geneva is more of an admin area of headquarters in Geneva, but if you work in projects for, let's say, water supply and disease control and all that stuff, you probably have to go at some point in a country elsewhere. Same with private sector. If you work for a big multinational company and they're, let's say they're completely changing their teams and reorganizing in another country, if you want to get to that next level of management where you're going to be involved in very, very key projects that are going to get you to the next level in terms of management, you probably need to go to that location. And one particular example that I've seen about that is when multinationals implement different things in different countries. Usually people from headquarters would see it as a career opportunity to come from the States to Europe, for example, to work on projects. So again, I would think that career and leadership and growing goes with mobility. So people who do not have the mobility, I find, will probably not find that they can grow their career to the extent that they could. So it's just something, again, to be aware of. It's part of the decision making that individuals have to make. Do you want a growing, thriving, multi-opportunity type of careers where headhunters contact you and you're out there basically making it, or do you want more of the job that pays the bills and you stay in one location? So it's decisions, and again, I find that the two don't necessarily go together. So that's in terms of opening up horizons. What you may want to do as well when you're in touch with recruiters is to hint that there's always negotiation possible. So sometimes people say, well, I don't want to apply to this particular city because that's not where I want to go. I want to stay in Geneva, so I'm not going to apply in Zurich or vice versa. I always say try it, because you don't know, maybe the position, again, it depends on the job, but maybe the job is something you can do remotely. If you are very skilled in one particular industry, and especially if they have a hard time recruiting for this industry, they may be a bit more flexible in saying, okay, maybe you work 3 days from home and the rest from the office. Or, I mean, we're getting there now in terms of, working from home. I think with digital jobs, it's going to be possible. So if you're in IT, you're an IT specialist or engineer or something like that, maybe there's ways also where you can work remotely. I know in international organizations, same thing. We have some people, sometimes it's complicated to have the person stay, within the city for a long period of time. So I think at least try it. I would say if you find a job that you find you're 100% fit, you think you could probably do it remotely or from your laptop, try to apply and see when you're in touch with the company, especially if it's a startup type of company or small organization. Probably they're a bit more flexible in having people work long distance or from their laptop. In my personal opinion, it's going to be the future anyways. We're already saturated inside the cities with traffic. So really working, now long distance should be possible, at least more and more. So don't hesitate. That's also a way to get opportunities. So moving straight along, still no more questions on creating opportunities. So moving right along. Starting your own business is a way to create opportunities. It's something very specific, because most people, in terms of creating opportunities, they're thinking again in terms of a job and finding a job. But when you're, for example, in a particular location where there's not much going on for you and becomes quite difficult, and you see that probably at the level where you're at, there's not going to be much. However, you've always been really interested in starting your own business and creating your own opportunities, basically. I find that it could be a very good idea to consider it at least. Maybe do the skills assessment, see if it's something that that could be a good solution for you, at least in the short term. Now, I find that with people doing their own business, it's a little bit difficult sometimes if it doesn't work out. And this is what people, sometimes they stop doing it because they think, okay, if I go for my own business and let's say that, you know, it doesn't work out, then it will be almost a check mark against me. I would say try it. At least it's something that you can say you've done 110% and you really grow from it, I think, as an individual in general. So try to do it. I would say try to go for your own business if it's something that you find could be a solution to your unemployment and you have ideas and you have energy and you have a good potential to do it. I would say try to do it. Get resources out there. There's more and more now groups and information on how to create a business and support as well to do it. I find one of the solutions I'm extremely passionate about personally is home business. I find that it's probably the ideal solution for most people, including women, because you can be with your children and also work part-time. So you get everything. In my view, it's the ideal solution because you get everything. You can work, but you can do it part-time. You can be with your children and your family. You can have the most satisfaction because you have no boss above you that tells you what to do every day and how to do it. So you can be 100% the own boss of your job and decide who you want to work with as well, because you can, you know, decide which clients and which partners and who to basically do partnerships with. So that's why I see it as the ideal solution. Now you need help to do it properly. You need to be advised, you know, by the right people so that you can get set up basically at the beginning. You can test your idea. You can, you know, also grow. Because otherwise, you know, if you have a business but you're not doing anything in your business, you need clients that are willing to pay for your services. But I think I said it in a previous video, especially if you have jobs that are typical laptop jobs like marketing, IT, consulting, I say that's definitely the solution. I mean, you don't have to stay unemployed one more day. You can just say, make the decision to say I'm doing it freelance or as my own business, work from home. And that's it, you know, you immediately, I would say, find a solution for yourself. So again, get the support, whether it's from me, and there's other people out there that I know in the Geneva region or in Switzerland in general that offer workshops. You have ebooks, you have videos, all the support now is there to make sure that you have the proper support to be successful and that you have people to ask questions to and to regroup also and make it like a community. So on Pleiad HC, obviously my main, I would say, client group are people looking for an actual job, but I want to encourage, and I try to show that in my Facebook, ownership of your own career, meaning becoming your own boss, creating your own business. You know, I really try to push for this because I know deep down that it is the solution, in my view, to most people. But it takes time sometimes to get there and realize that it's the right way. So again, stay motivated. If you think you have a good business idea or consulting idea, you can also drop me a note, send me a message. You know, I'm always willing to reply to you. If you say, you know, what do you think of this? Do you think I could make a living in Switzerland? You know, testing your idea with me, I'm happy to do that.